And as he said, the process of the magnetic field flipping has begun and is irrevocable. It's going to happen, and this is concentrating the minds at NASA more than any other project you can name. Its initial effects will manifest extreme changes in the weather with huge global superstorms, and will probably flip by about 2020. This was based on the comparison or the looking at the data that they had. Now, he was asked, Graham Birdsall was asked, not to release that information until it became more widely known. So he didn't actually release it until September of 2002. But what is amazing is that this formation appeared in 2000 at the same time as they were making their conclusions about the data that they had regarding the diminishing magnetic field. So again, this is sort of highlighting the fact that the intelligence behind the genuine formations are trying to give us messages that are going beyond just geometry and mathematics, so that we're aware of things. In this particular case, of course, saying, look at your magnetic field. Now, I don't know how clear that is. This is a photograph that I actually took on the 30th of October 2003 of the Aurora Borealis in my back garden at home in Somerset in southwest England. Now, it's very rare that we get the aurora down that far, but that particular year there were these huge solar flares and coronal mass ejections that hit the Earth, and they were knocking out things like satellites and mobile phone networks. You had those powerful grid failures in places like New York, Detroit. We had them in the UK and in Italy as well. So it was a sort of an example of how solar flares can actually knock out electrical systems. And the fact that we now are so reliant on that, you can see we are, it's a major concern to the way we operate. And of course, with a diminishing magnetic field, then we are much more vulnerable to this type of thing. This aurora was so incredible. This is a picture that's taken with the shutter open with about 5 minutes exposure. And we saw the aurora coming at the north. It went right over our heads and as far south as we could see. In fact, it was so bright, this one, that it was actually seen as far south as Florida. But again, as you can see, with a diminishing magnetic field, we do have an issue. Now, also, talking of which, I know of a couple of people that have actually said that they've seen birds react in a strange way around crop formations. One of them was a lady who saw a flock of pigeons approaching a crop formation. The flock actually split as it approached the formation, flew around the formation, and then connected again at the other side, rejoined and continued. So this was showing the fact that the formations, the genuine formations, actually have a huge dome of energy around them, and I suspect actually going into the Earth as well. This, of course, can be detected by dowsers, and people, with sensitive hands can feel the energies, and equipment, as I mentioned earlier. And, of course, doves and pigeons are birds that navigate using the magnetic field. So it's as though they clearly could see that there was something beyond that. So much so that actually some helicopters as well have had problems with their instrumentation as they fly directly over a formation when they're taking the aerial photographs. But it's only over the formation where this happens that the instruments sort of go wild as they go over it and then clear up again once they go beyond it, only near the formations. So this shows again that many of these are not being created by blokes with planks of wood and ropes. There's a huge energy involved here. This is another beautiful formation that appeared in 2000 at a place called Woodborough Hill. And in fact, if you squint your eyes slightly, you see it actually brings out a more three-dimensional aspect to it, as though it's a ball of wool or the head of a sunflower or even an opening lotus flower, which of course is very relevant to spiritual awakening. And then this formation appeared. This is in 2000, June of 2000, known as the silicon chip for obvious reasons. Now, talking of energies, this had a really negative energy. In fact, I know several people that said they couldn't even go into that formation. As they approached it, before they got to the actual formation itself, the energy was so sort of negative they felt nauseous and sick and didn't even go into it. And this highlights the issue that there are several different sort of agencies at work here, I think. Certainly you've got the hoaxing side of it, but I think there is an ET element to this, possibly some cases are negative ETs, in other cases positive ETs trying to give a more spiritual message, possibly. Other people would say that this is an easy formation to hoax, it's just made up of loads of lines and squares, whatever. But actually it's much more complex than that. there are 1,600 squares and oblongs of standing crop, which comes up to about here, top of your hip or thigh. And in fact, if you draw a line on that through the middle, you'll actually see, say through the middle here, if you draw a line and actually fold that formation like a piece of paper, the squares in the bottom right-hand corner and the pins around it will actually fit into the clear areas on the left, very much like a plug going into a socket. And if you draw a line through the centre and then do the same going upwards, again it'll actually plug into the opposite. This is ludicrously complex. Now, talking of silicon chip, of course, you're all very familiar with Colonel Phil Corso, who's acknowledged that he worked for the Research and Development Department at the Pentagon in 61, 63, and was involved in back engineering UFO technology from Roswell to seed into mainstream industry through government contracting programs. Of course, from which came, so we're told, and I do believe, things like silicon chip, fiber optics, night vision, Kevlar, body armor, lasers, things like that. Now, this is the paradox that we live in. We have these sort of two realities. The one where we're told this stuff is real, that much of our modern technology is derived from this technology. Things like computers, mobile phones, sat-nav, all this stuff. And yet there's mainstream society that doesn't even necessarily even believe in UFOs and ETs. But I feel that we are coming to the time now, and this is being very clearly shown this week, that these two sort of areas are definitely going to merge together. The balls of light have been associated with crop formation creation for many years now. And there are many people who've photographed and filmed these balls of light flying around the fields and the formations. One bit of footage, which you may have seen, shows 4 of these balls of light flying around a field, and then a formation at a place called Oliver's Castle, just collapsing underneath these balls of light within a matter of seconds. And then 2 of these balls actually fly through a hedgerow, across another field, and through another hedgerow. Now, we saw the original footage only a few days after it appeared, and this is when you could see this happening with the balls of light going through the hedges. But most of the footage after that, when this was debunked, they'd actually clipped that, so you didn't see the fullness of what was really going on. And from our research, I truly believe that this is genuine footage, and it fits with the fact that the formations appear really quickly in a matter of seconds. But also, the important point is to note that the actual balls of light flew through the hedge with no diminishing in their speed, so that they have the ability to go through matter, without affecting it in any way. Now, on the other hand, of course, you're familiar also with the orbs, these sort of very fine, opaque balls of light that people have been taking images of, certainly since the mid-90s onwards. Now, initially, again, with ordinary film and ordinary cameras, so this isn't just a digital sort of revolution as people think it is. And, discounting things like dust and water droplets, snowflakes, light refraction, the research has shown, or people believe, that these are actually photographs of spirits in the next dimension over. This is a picture that was taken in a place that was very badly haunted. They were doing renovation work in it, and it actually stimulated a lot of poltergeist activity. So up on the top left, those 2 orbs that are up there, I believe, are images of ghosts, basically. And this is how the research shows that they are possibly ghosts, spirits, often people doing meditation or healings. There'll be balls of light around them, as though they're actually guides or guardian angels even. So this is a slightly different phenomena than the balls of light that are being seen in relation to the crop formations. Now, this is a huge formation that appeared up at a place called Milk Hill, up on top of this hill at Alton Barnes in Wiltshire. This is about 800 feet across, and now this is stepping up to a 6-fold geometry. You had the single spiral, the threefold, and now a 6-fold spiral, made up of either equilateral triangles or a hexagon or a Star of David even, spiraling out. It's a massive formation. In fact, it's so big that the media, particularly in the West, were actually quite complimentary about this, because they realised that you just couldn't create something as big as that in just a few hours of darkness. And in the UK, in the summer, there are literally only a few hours.